Hi, I'm Johnny Marr. I'm Watch Sales Director at iconicwatches.co.uk. Today we're going to be reviewing perhaps one of the most iconic watches ever manufactured, namely the stainless steel Rolex Daytona, which is currently the most highly in demand production sports watch in the world. You may or may not be familiar, this watch is virtually never available at Rolex authorised agents. Typically subject to a waiting list of up to 7 or 8 years in some circumstances. Fortunately at Iconic Watches we always tend to try and keep these watches in stock. We also aim to have some pre-owned examples in stock. The watch we're going to be reviewing today for you is the brand new latest version on a V serial, and I'll be outlining some of the model revisions which have been made and also helping you identify any counterfeit examples of such watches which unfortunately are in circulation. You can see here the absolute latest model, the latest incarnation of the steel Rolex Daytona. The Rolex Daytona is one of the oldest watches in the Rolex range. It's been around in various incarnations since the 1960s. As you can see, some of the latest model changes on this hand are apparent from the dial. Fairly recently, Rolex changed the hands on the watch. You can see these are now thicker items. This was as a consequence. Some of the earlier watches manufactured from around 2000 to 2004 or so, they had much thinner hands and there were a lot of problems with legibility, particularly on the black dial watch. We had a number of customers who bought the older watches on black dials and had to return them simply because they had problems reading the time. You can see this watch has the latest in-house Rolex movements. These watches actually used the Zenith movement up until around 1999-2000, where Zenith stopped letting Rolex use their movements and Rolex introduced their own in-house movements, which is a very, very fine movement in this watch. It's quite rare in the watch world and it's got a very long power reserve, over 50 hours. Most watches tend to have a power reserve of about 40 hours or so. You can see this is a brand new watch. Comes with all the accessories, as indeed to all our new watches at Iconic Watches. You can see this seal here, that's the chronometer certification tag. Most of the Rolex watches in the range will carry this feature. It certifies that the watch keeps time to a limit of between -4 and +6 seconds tolerance per day, which is a very, very good level of accuracy from a watch which ultimately has a mechanical movement. The green tag you can see on the watch, that's just a model specific tag for the Daytona, and on the reverse of that tag you'd find the case reference number. And you can see on the new model Daytona, that's not particularly apparent from this photograph we've got here on the video, but another recent model revision apart from the hands I mentioned, Rolex have actually started to engrave the inner bezel ring all the way around the watch. That's actually engraved with Rolex, 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 and at the 12 o'clock position Rolex have introduced a very clever anti-counterfeit measure whereby they actually engrave the watch's case reference number, which is equivalent to a chassis number on a car. It's unique to each watch. It's actually engraved on the inside of the glass. Not apparent also on this photo and very hard to show even with photographs. There's also an anti-counterfeit measure on the actual sapphire crystal of the watch. At 6 o'clock, all Rolex watches made after around 2005 or so, they actually have a laser-etched Rolex coronet on the glass of the watch. This latest model Rolex, not only has it got the features we've already mentioned, the major revision Rolex have made is they've actually changed the clasp of the watch. If you have a look at the clasp here, you can see it's a much more rugged and actually much better designed than the previous Rolex clasp. The model before this, all watches, some M serial watches incorporate this new clasp. All V serials, this watch is obviously a V serial, incorporate this clasp as well. The old item used to be a little bit more flimsy than this, unfortunately, whereas if we open up this clasp, one can see it's a beautifully engineered affair and a lot thicker than the old Rolex clasps which they used to use. You can see typically on this watch, as with all unworn watches we sell at Iconic Watches, not only does it come with its full box and accessories, which you can see in the background, but it also comes with the full plastic case seals intact. Obviously this proves that the watch has never been worn, and you should always be very, very careful if any watch company sells you a watch described as unworn or new that doesn't retain these case seals. You've actually got the case seal there on the clasp. You can see some other plastic case seals here on the retractable clasp extension. There's also case seals on the sides of the watch and actually on the reverse of the case. Rolex used to use a hologram. That's now been changed to a clear plastic. Rolex Daytona, as you can see it, it's on an oyster bracelet, and unique to the Daytona and to some of the other upper range Rolex sports watches, you can see that it actually has a polished centre link and a matte outer link. The Rolex Yachtmaster in steel and platinum has a bracelet similar to this, as does the new Rolex GMT Master 2 in stainless steel. It aesthetically makes the watch a bit smarter, more suitable for formal wear as well as casual wear. You can see the dial on the steel Rolex Daytona. This watch, you can tell, has the new Rolex in-house movement, which was introduced in around the year 2000, 2001. Because if you have a look at those two central subdials, you'll notice they're not symmetrical. The old Zenith movement watches, the subdials were absolutely symmetrical and completely in line with the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions on the dial. The Rolex Daytona, if you have a look at the bottom dial, that's actually the subsidiary sub-seconds dial on this watch. A lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of the counterfeit Rolex Daytonas have a second hand, the main second hand here, which is continuously flowing around the watch. This on a genuine Rolex Daytona should only really be activated once the chronograph function is running. This watch has a chronograph, a classic chronograph, which measures hours, minutes and seconds. Elapsed seconds are actually measured by the second hand here. I shall demonstrate how the chronograph works. Obviously the Rolex Daytona is very cleverly designed in that the push buttons have to be unscrewed from the case. Obviously this should only be done away from water, as once these are open the case will let water in. If we undo this by unscrewing it, the chronograph function is now accessible. So if we press the top button, this button is the stop and start function for the chronograph. Once one presses it, you can see that second hand measuring the seconds, and the hands will also slowly be moving on the 3 and the 9 o'clock dials. This button is then used to stop the chronograph function. So if we press that, you can see the subsidiary seconds has stopped just at the quarter past position, and then the other chronograph pusher, we press this and this will reset the movement. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our review today. We hope you found it helpful. Obviously it would be good if we could see you at the website, iconicwatches.co.uk, and if there's any questions, obviously I can be contacted there. Thank you. Bye.